you all. Thank you for being here. Now we're making a transition. And D.D. Palmer said from the physical to the spiritual. But if we look at those two words, physical means nature, and spiritual is still nature. Different degree, but it's still nature. So sitting there, this is what came to me. We're making a transition from the beast to a tree. And does the Bible speak of the tree of life, of good and evil, and a tree of knowledge. But in order to learn all the things we had to learn with all these years past, we had to leave the tree of life and live the life of a beast. Whether it would be a worm, a fish, a bird. They're all beasts, or anything on earth. A meaning that beasts do not have eternity, and for beasts to keep going, the male produces the spermatozoon, which means the sperm of a beast, and the female produces an egg. But in a tree, the seed is complete, is buried into the ground, and it comes up. And so to make this transition, this is what we must go through. And it isn't easy, but it will be well rewarded eventually. So I hope I've made myself clear on that particular point. So it's best to think of the transition from a beast, which is flesh and blood, to the tree of life, which has no blood, but has a spirit. Is that clear? Think of it that way. Remember, all this is done by parallels. We parallel everything. Now, we all probably know by now what a geode is. Let me write it down for you so you'll see it. And a geode is that big hunk of rock, very so-called crude on the outside, but when you cut it open, you will find some sort of a precious stone inside. Now, how does this thing come about? We are told that is caused by the bubble of a volcano. And what happens is that these precious stones get caught in there, and then it builds itself around. The idea is always looking for something on the external. Now let's look at this thing from the internal. It is a bubble. And in that bubble is a particular frequency. but also in that bubble there was a seed. And when that seed starts to reproduce these frequencies, it will reproduce whatever we find in it. So you see, everything comes from one. And it depends upon which frequency we're at. If we have sardonic, it's a particular frequency. If we have amethyst, it's another frequency. And if we had the ability, we can take one, that is the mental ability, we can take one, change the frequency, and that would become whatever frequency you stop at, and that's what will come. And this is all done with a mental attitude. But before we can do all these things, as I said before, we must go through torture. Now we look at mythology of the Greeks and the Romans. Now remember that in all things there was an element of truth. So now let's look for the truth. Both the Greeks and the Romans speak of Aphrodite, or Aphrodite, as the Greeks would say it, and the Romans Venus. And both of them are the god or the goddess of love. And both, one is no different than the other. Venus and Aphrodite, one belongs to the Romans, one belongs to the Greeks, but the idea is the same. So don't separate them in such a fashion that you'll have to study one separately and the other one separately. Bring them together and just look at them as this one. Now both of them originate from the sea, from the foam of the sea, the froth of the sea, which is no more than a bubble of the sea. This is their way of thinking about Venus or Aphrodite. And how wrong are they? So let's go within ourselves. And from where does our soul come? And if we look up the word soul, we'll see that the Germans looked at the soul arising from the sea. So when we speak of the primordial sea, of which sea are we speaking? The one that's in the soul. Now remember, one time the soul had no water. None. But when man fell, in order to get to a new level, now I'm not saying he was punished. It had to be. There's a reason for all things. When man fell, for the purpose of bringing about a new race, a new frequency race,